The main reason that I'm making this video is because of the TikTok ban. A lot of American youth have gone to the Chinese application called Red Note. And there they interacted with Chinese people, and they ended up with the impression that the Chinese way of life and the Chinese country is superior to the United States. And they're making viral videos on Twitter, being very concerned over the fact that the American government seems to be evil in their mind. And while I don't have a lot of young people that are watching this channel, I know that I have a lot of Americans who may have these young people as part of their family. And so I encourage them to have a conversation where you can debunk some of the notions that the impressionable youth had while interacting with China, because some of them is untrue, while other would be something that they wouldn't actually like if it was implemented in the United States. And for instance, this is one of them, right? So low unemployment. Now, it is true that in communist countries, unemployment is actually very low. And it's also true that because of this, they can pay incredibly low wages. Because, again, like a lot of people are going to work. And in order to accomplish this, in the case of communist Romania, they would actually force you to work. Like if police would find you doing nothing on the street in the middle of the day, they would take you to the police station, apply a correction, the Americans would call it a shiner, and then throw you in a factory. But they don't often have to use force. Another thing that they use is the cultural zeitgeist. The same way that in America it's not illegal to say the N-word, but it is heavily discouraged. It's the same thing in China where it's not illegal to be unemployed, but it's extremely discouraged. And this is not just a Chinese thing, this is also an Asian thing that has to do with collectivism. And collectivism is a way of thinking that just doesn't exist in the United States. So what this actually means is that the actions you perform don't reflect on you as a person, they reflect on your entire family. So imagine a system where if the kid says the N-word, the father is also responsible as if he said it. Like the father can also get into trouble. If the kid is doing drugs, the father is also responsible. Now, again, the system has advantages in the sense that it constrains members of society to behave differently. Every action is going to be weighed in heavily upon you, knowing that you're affecting your family, not just yourself. But at the same time, there's a lot of social pressure, right? Like imagine if you're the father and one day you're getting in trouble at work because your son said something online. And when I say your son, you're talking about a 25-year-old man, right? There's a lot of pressure. And they have certain stigmas that the American society would never be able to have. I mean, the American society doesn't even have stigma on fat shaming, right? So, like, you do the opposite. Like, you're trying to crack down on social pressures. While in China, they're trying to crack up. And one of these social pressures is the fact that everyone has to work. I don't know if they have the same Romanian mindset, but here in Romania, if you saw someone that was unemployed, the community would call them a social parasite. Like, that was the actual term that communists used. While in America, usually, like, if you talk about someone that doesn't work, you'll have, like, 6 or 7 Karens being like, well, maybe he can't. Maybe he has some health issues. Maybe he's trying, but he can't get a job. Like, usually, society comes up with excuses. While in a place like communism, society comes up with blames. Like, if you find out that someone can't work, first you blame them until proven otherwise. In America, it's the opposite way around. And even if they show that, well, they just don't want to work, they want to be on welfare, even then, people will be like, well, maybe it's not our business, you know, like, it doesn't matter what they do. And so, like, this difference in culture obviously is going to create different outcomes. And so you have this article in Romanian that talks about how in China, there are companies that hire fake offices where unemployed people can pretend to work in order to avoid the stigma of being jobless. So I want you to understand that there's not just like a societal pressure that's small. It's so high that people are willing to pay $4, which, by the way, like $4 in China is a lot more than $4 in the United States. Like, you can buy more with those $4 in China. And people who are unemployed and aren't making money are willing to spend that cash in order to pretend to keep working. And this is not something that's particular to China. Like, trying to maintain appearances is something that's particular to Asia in general. In Japan, like, for instance, there's a service called Rent a Girlfriend. And, like, this is not necessarily a negative service. It's not something sexual. Like, if you rent a girlfriend, she's not going to make out with you. She's not going to, like, perform any sexual activity. You may get some hand-holding, though. But the idea is for lonely men to rent a woman that will actually go on a date with them, right? And they will go on a date. They will talk to them. They may watch a movie. They may eat an ice cream, have a coffee. And that's it, right? The idea is that you're providing a service for lonely men. But it's also that certain men who are young and inexperienced in talking with women, like, using this service, may learn how to do it, right? Learn how to feel more comfortable around women. There's a conversation if it's a good service or not. But there's also another service which is called Rent a Family. And I was like, why the fuck would you want to rent a family? And when you rent a family, like, you actually have a father there, you have a wife, or you have a mother, right? Like, you can have an elderly couple pretending to be your mom and dad. And again, like, this baffled my brain. I was like, who would want to do this? Like, why would you want to rent a family? And the answer is that in a collectivist society where your actions reflect on your family, sometimes if you do something that's incredibly disrespectful, your family can disown you. So, like, in order for your father to stop getting the stigma from you, they'll be like, okay, well, I disowned my son. He's not my son, basically. And the father would just limit the stigma. Like, there's still stigma upon him for the actions you did, but, like, they're limited. And so the person that gets disowned is viewed, like, in the United States, kind of like a racist. Like, there's huge public stigma on you. Besides the fact that you're not going to get the inheritance. Like, if your dad owns something, you're not going to get it. But there's also, like, the massive stigma that you are now disowned. And how will people find out that you're disowned? Well, there are certain community events, such as attending a funeral, attending someone's wedding. I think, like, there may be, like, a couple of job-related events. And your coworkers may attend. And so if it's, like, a wedding, they're going to wonder, well, where's his parents? And you're hiring these people to pretend that they're your parents in order for your coworkers not to find out you're disowned and for the rumors not to spread. And a lot of Americans just don't understand the huge social pressure that exists in these nations that are hyper family oriented, incredibly, I guess you could say tribalistic, because, like, a family is not just mother, father, and son, right? Like, a family can be mother, father, and 7 kids, and all those kids, they get married and they have their own children at one point. So, like, a family is actually quite numerous in some cases, and you have a responsibility towards all of them. And so, yeah, like, a lot of problems that America have would be fixed with this Asian mindset. Like, this is important to point out. It's not a Chinese mindset. It's not necessarily communistic. It's Asian in nature. But you would have, like, other pressures, other social strains, right? Like this is something that I've noticed a lot of Americans on the internet. They have a problem. Like, for instance, I've seen many young individuals unable to score a girlfriend. And so, like, they would look at societies that have arranged marriages and they would say, wow, you know what, like, maybe this is a better society. Like, if I was in that society, I would have an arranged marriage. And while it's true, like, you would actually have someone, if you are in a society with arranged marriage, you'd also have someone that maybe you don't like or maybe you don't get along with. And if that's the case, you would suffer probably more, because if you're unable to get a girlfriend when you're 20, the reality is that when you're 25, maybe you would and maybe you'd get someone that you like. But in a society with arranged marriage, like you'd be forced to live with someone that maybe you find intolerable. And maybe you would find someone else that you like later on, and you'd be very upset that you're not able to have that person. And these marriages are usually not made for love in the same context that we have in the West. So, like a lot of these people that are looking with envy would probably not appreciate these types of societies. But you need the context. You need to understand the goods and the bads, because the reality is there are no social fixes. I mean, sometimes there are, but they're very rare. Usually you get trade-offs. Like when you change something, you get something that maybe you want, but you also get the unexpected consequences. Like, for instance, this whole thing with what you do reflects on the family is probably one of the reasons why the suicide rate is higher in Asia. And it's probably another reason why many people choose to stay locked up in their rooms in places like Japan. Because they're like, well, if I go outside and I upset someone, it offends my father as well. And so, like, they're a lot more on the edge. And they're a lot more double thinking when it comes to their actions. And in this case, right, like, imagine you're getting unemployed and you're already stressed about, like, how are you going to pay for your family? How are you going to find a job? And on top of that, the stress is higher. It's like, well, what if people find out? So, like, instead of relying on your family for a network of support and trying to figure out where you're going to get another job, in this situation, like, you have to spend extra cash in order to get an office to pretend that you're still working. So, again, it's just absolutely soul-crushing, but it does promote the concept of people finding jobs, so unemployment is probably lower. Let me know what you guys think, though, and as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.